All right, Blizzard actually made a really good step in the right direction with some of the changes to affixes coming in Season 2. Now, we had talked a couple of times about just affixes in general. You know, if you've been watching my stream at all, I've also been kind of talking about what my general thoughts are on the affixes. And I was kind of waiting to see what was going to continue to evolve with the affixes over time before making too many more YouTube videos. But Blizzard today has released a blue post talking about some of the changes to the Season 2 Mythic Plus affixes. And as the title reads, Explosive removed and Volcanic returns. And Blizzard made a pretty big blue post today. And dude, I love Blizzard blue posts. It's always a great day for me. I think that getting just inside the mind of some of the Blizzard decisions that they're making and them continuing to be communicative is super stellar. And so what this blue post states is, as we continue to watch everyone play Mythic Plus on the PTR and take in your feedback, we want to share some additional changes to this week's PTR. Our changes this week aim to further lessen the impact of affixes on Mythic Plus dungeon gameplay and match our more challenging affix to later Keystone levels as players progress through the system. And so you're like, what exactly does this mean? Because that's not actually super clear, but we'll talk about it in a second. And so they also said that we've been evaluating our affix tiers and their impact on Keystones. While we feel the change bringing affixes online at 7 and 14 is healthy, we want to also ensure the right level of challenges coming online at level 7 and 14. With that said, we feel the current level 7 affixes have a larger impact on the moment-to-moment gameplay for groups, and now have decided to switch the levels that our Keystone affixes come online. Periodic affixes are now added to Keystones at level 7, was previously 14, which are Inflicted, Incorporeal, Volcanic, and Entangling. Oh, and Storming. And then affixes that trigger on death or health ranges have been moved to level 14, which were basically Spiteful, Raging, Bursting, Bolstering, and Sanguine. And they moved these from 4 and 7 to 7 and 14 to try to give a wider range of gameplay experience. If you hadn't heard about that, it's actually, I thought it was a pretty good change. I thought it was pretty reasonable as a whole. In addition to this change above, we've also reviewed the impact of our affixes and made tuning adjustments with the goal of lessening the overall impact on dungeon gameplay. And I swear to God, I must be dreaming. Because right off the bat, level 7, Explosive will be retired in Dragonflight Season 2 and replaced by Volcanic. This was an affix that they've been trying to rework multiple times on the PTR, and they've been given a lot of negative feedback in regards to this affix just as a whole. And so Blizzard being willing to do this is, in my mind, very positive. And so what did they change about this affix? They gave it more HP, but a longer fuse. And this required it to be more of a group effort to kill. In addition to that, the explosives scaled with dungeon level. And so at a certain point, it was like impossible to kill them. And if 2 spawned at once, it was also impossible to kill them. And some classes had a significant better ability to be able to kill them than other classes. And that created some weird dynamics where explosive was just unplayable more often than not. And so Blizzard would have had to have gone back to how explosive previously was in the last season, where it was like low HP mobs. But that also has problems where then healers are almost exclusively doing it, and that kind of sucks for a wide variety of reasons. Blizzard has agreed, and now they're retiring it for Dragonflight Season 2 and replacing with Volcanic. Volcanic is one of the easiest affixes, I will admit, and the impact of this dungeon affix is relatively low. But overall, I think that the removal of explosive is one that I am quite thrilled to see. Incorporeal. Basically, incorporeal beings now fade away whenever combat with incorporeal beings is faded. This is actually a good change. It's kind of obnoxious to be stuck in combat with them after you've dropped combat with the trash pack that is around them. I still have a lot of issues with incorporeal. The primary one is the fact that it doesn't go away fast enough in some CC. The disparity between some CC and the other CCs is really bad. So say you don't have things like the best CC for Incorporeal are things such as Hibernate, Polymorph, Shackle Undead, that kind of thing. Spammable CC that doesn't have any cooldown. And then like obviously bad CC are things such as AoE stops that don't work on them or interrupts, because these mobs don't have a lockout time. They have a 6-second cast and they persist for, or they have an 8-second cast and they persist for 20 seconds. So it will take 3 kicks if you're kicking into it to remove them. On top of that, you can have 4 of these spawn at once. And so that's also a problem in and of itself. But in general, it's like the affixes and like not the affixes, but like just how this mob is played, what CC you have to use into it. This seems very imbalanced at its current state. I think that if they moved these mobs to be more similar to Razageth Sparks, where they required 1 CC regardless of whether it was AoE or single target, or 1 interrupt, this would be a lot more reasonable. And then I think in addition to that, they need to put a spawning cap on Incorporeal, because the ability to be able to get 2 sets of 2 spawning at once is outrageously difficult, and I think that this still needs to be tuned down a little bit. But I think that this change right here, I think that in isolation, this Incorporeal being changed is pretty good. Entangling snare effect has been reduced to 30%, was 50%. Entangling now has a visual indicating the maximum range of the vine. I don't know what that means, but that's good. And now Entangling has a distinct sound cue when it's applied to players. I think that these are all really good things. In general, this affix wasn't super problematic outside of, in my mind, like very specific situations, particularly for the tank. Now, those are the spots that I think are going to be the most problematic, is whenever the tank doesn't necessarily want to kite. You can use things such as freedoms or shapeshifting or that kind of thing to be able to remove Entangling off of you. Tiger's Lust as well. Now, I think that this is more of a weak aura style affix, where if you have a weak aura for it, it's going to be significantly easier than if you don't. I think that if Blizzard does this thing where they put like green like effects around your screen, I think that that could be something that is really positive for this affix just as a whole. Now, what is this visual indication indicating the maximum range of the vine? What does that mean? I think that that's something that I'm going to be very interested in seeing. But I think that what they have done to Entangling here makes this, honestly, a pretty reasonable affix. And I think that this has gotten to a state where I'm okay with the impact level of this affix. I think that this one is a really good one. And overall, it should be pretty good. Afflicted. Afflicted Soul's health no longer scales after Keystone level 20. Hot dog, I'm happy with this one. This is one of the biggest things that I was really worried about with Afflicted just in general, is once you got past level 20, what was their HP totals going to be looking like? Was it going to be feasible for a healer to even be able to heal up one of them, much less 2 of them or something like that? Is it going to be a situation where you are forced to dispel them, where some comps are going to be running into significantly more steep challenges than other compositions? That was more of my question with Afflicted, especially with the scaling. And so I think that Blizzard being already preemptive with this and changing it to no longer scale their HP after a 20 is actually a big deal. Because I don't think the challenge of Afflicted should necessarily be like, oh, I've dedicated these globals to this and I couldn't get it topped in time because I didn't start dedicating the globals soon enough. It's more like, if you try to participate with the affix, you should be able to reasonably do it. And I think that Blizzard looking to change this to no longer scale after Keystone level 20 is an excellent change. Now, I think that they also, kind of similar to what I was saying about Incorporeal, need like a bit lower amount of Afflicted Souls that can spawn at once. Currently, I've seen stuff somewhere upwards of like 5 spawn at once on pretty large trash pools. Now, I think that is a bit too many. Now, I think if we could cut this number back to like 2 or 3, it would probably be a little bit more reasonable. I don't think that they should necessarily scale so linearly with pack size, kind of like Explosive did. That seems like that was a problem. But I think that this is getting Afflicted into pretty close to a good state, in a state that I'm relatively happy with. Spiteful Shades melee damage reduced by 10%, and in isolation, you're like, I'm still getting one shot by the Spiteful Shades, even in like a 24 anyways. So that's not actually solving anything. However, Spiteful Shades health and damage no longer scale after Keystone level 20. And this is a genius move by Blizzard, because Spiteful Shades are particularly obnoxious in some situations, and getting meleeed by them and getting one-shot 100 to 0 without much counterplay is really annoying. And so, okay, you can take like, a melee. Maybe you can take 2 and not die if you have like a personal popped. Anything more than that, you're still going to die. But them not scaling past Keystone level 20 and one-shotting players is a good change for generally the health of the player base. Raging, which is one I'm shocked that is getting changed, by the way. Raging now grants creatures immunity to crowd control effects for 20 seconds upon reaching 30% health remaining. Was previously 50% increased damage done until defeated. Now, I don't know if crowd control effects also implies interrupt immunity. Like, what does that mean? Does it work similar to Emissary of the Tides / inspired mobs? This, to me, reads like it's just CC. In addition to that, it starts at 30% HP. Does it break out of the CC? I'm really interested in seeing what Raging is going to look like now with this new context. But I think that overall, it's actually kind of more balanced like this. Now, is it going to be attached to an enraged style effect too? Like, is that something that is it going to be purgeable? Because with the previous iteration of Raging, with the increased damage done, like that was like generally just like a rage style mechanic. Is it going to be soothable still? Now that's something that's got to be answered. I think that this is an interesting way of moving this. I think that my initial impression is like I'm not super thrilled with this, but I think that in general the health of what the Raging affix was, specifically with like Evoker being in the meta and stuff like that, I think that this takes Raging into more of a healthier game state for a larger portion of the player base. Bolstering. Bolstering no longer increases the health of affected creatures. Was previously health and damage. This is great. I think that this is something I've been asking for probably a full expansion now. There's no need for it to increase the health of affected mobs. The damage should be like the big thing. Like, if you have a bolster mob and you let a whatever bolt volley go off, you should be wiping. You shouldn't lose 40 seconds on your timer by not playing bolstering perfectly or whatever. And I think that that was also particularly creating weird interactions if you think about the cross platform for like Alpha Eagles. I was playing bolstering last weekend, and the cross platform just lost me a minute and a half in my key because the Alpha Eagles got bolstered every single time, and then they were impossible to kill with all those stacks of bolstering. And so I think that the change to this is absolutely phenomenal. It also allows Blizzard a little bit easier of a time of balancing this affix just as a whole. And I think that this is something that I am so thrilled to see change. Sanguine, and I'm shocked that this is changing. Sanguine Ichor Puddles now last for 12 seconds, was previously 20 seconds. In high coordinated groups, this was never going to be an issue because your tank and knockbacks were going to be preemptive enough to where you were not going to have as much Sanguine healing as possible. Now, in less coordinated groups, this is an absolutely massive change, and I think that this is a change that is very good for a large portion of the player base that is not in the high-end scene. Sanguine is particularly obnoxious for people who aren't kiting at the affix and not being super diligent about it. And the skill variance between a high skill and like a medium skill tank was very apparent whenever you were playing with them. And so I think that changing the Sanguine Ichor Puddles to 12 seconds, previously was 20 seconds, is phenomenal. And so then they finish this off by saying, thank you again for taking time to play Mythic Plus on the PTR. We appreciate your feedback and we'll continue to read, watch, and play and let you know as we make additional changes. Cool. I think the only thing I'm looking to change is like Incorporeal. I think that that's the biggest one. And then like obviously put the cap on Afflicted. But this is a big W. This is a massive W for Blizzard. And I think that this is something that is going to continue to push Mythic Plus into a game state where a lot of players are happier to play. And something that I've been continuing to harp on over the past couple of weeks on like our podcast and stuff like that is like Blizzard states that they don't want affixes to be so impactful that you are playing the affixes and not the dungeon. And now I feel a little bit more confident in saying that they are moving in the direction of you playing more of the dungeon and playing less of the affixes. And so I'm thrilled to see this. I think that counterplay potential on a lot of these affixes is starting to increase. And I think that this is going to create a much better M+ season as a whole. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.